She was a Mongolian translator, rumored to be pregnant with the child of Malaysia's future prime minister. In 2006, she was abducted, shot, and blown apart with military-grade C4 explosives. Nearly 20 years later, her ghost still haunts Malaysia because in 2025, her father walked into a Kuala Lumpur courtroom, demanding the case be reopened, armed with testimony that Najib Razak ordered the killing. Najib now sits in prison for another scandal, while whispers still accuse his wife, Rosmah, of knowing the truth. This is the Mistress murder Najib's government tried to erase. August 2025, Kuala Lumpur. A courtroom packed with cameras and whispers. An aging father stands clutching a faded photograph of his daughter. His name is Shaariibuu. For nearly 2 decades, he has flown from Mongolia to Malaysia, demanding justice. This time, he isn't begging. He's armed with a lawsuit, a case filed against Malaysia's top police and prosecutors. He wants them to reopen the investigation into her murder. And the evidence? A sworn statement from one of the convicted killers. A statement that says he didn't act alone. He was following orders. Orders that came from the very top. For Malaysians, this case never died. Every time Najib Razak stumbles, Setef's daughter rises from the grave. Today, Najib is locked inside Kajang prison, a high-security complex on the edge of Kuala Lumpur, built for Malaysia's criminals, now home to its former prime minister, jailed for the multi-billion-dollar MDB scandal. And as he sits behind bars, Altantuya's father is back, determined to make the country remember. But for the rest of the world, here's why it matters. Before she became Malaysia's most dangerous ghost, Altantuya Shaariibuu was a glamorous translator. She moved in elite circles. Whispers tied her to powerful men. One her lover, another rumored to be Malaysia's future prime minister. And those whispers would prove deadly. Altantuya was more than a translator. She spoke Russian, French, English. She was young, glamorous, and always one step away from power. Officially, she was hired to help with Malaysia's billion-dollar submarine deal with France. A deal laced with bribes, kickbacks, and secrets. But her real connection was personal. She was the mistress of Abdul Razak Baginda, Najib Razak's closest ally, his advisor, his fixer. And rumors didn't stop there. Some said she was more than Baginda's lover. She was linked to Najib himself, the man who would soon become prime minister. But Najib wasn't alone. He was married to Rosmah Mansor. Rosmah wasn't just his wife. She was the force behind his rise. Ministers feared her. Tycoons catered to her. In Putrajaya, Malaysia's seat of power, her word carried weight. Few dared challenge. And now, there was a mistress, a glamorous outsider, rumored to be pregnant, a danger Rosmah would never allow. October 19th, 2006. A humid night in Kuala Lumpur. Altantuya stands outside the gates of a luxury home. She's nervous, angry, and out of patience. For weeks, she's been demanding money from Baginda, Najib's closest ally. Tonight, she's here to confront him in person. Her cousin waits nearby, watching as Altantuya approaches the house. She doesn't know this will be the last time she sees her alive. Altantuya presses the intercom, demanding to see Baginda. But inside the house, Baginda refuses to face her. He calls someone else instead, someone with far more power. Within minutes, 2 men arrive. They aren't hired thugs. They're elite police commandos, men trained to protect Malaysia's leaders. And on their list of assignments, guarding Najib Razak himself. The moment Altantuya sees them, she knows something is wrong. She turns back toward the street, trying to escape. Neighbors later report hearing her scream. But in this neighborhood, people know better than to get involved when politics mixes with power. The commandos grab her. They shove her into the back of a waiting car. Her cousin rushes forward, but the doors slam shut. Tires screech. The car disappears into the night. Altantuya's phone goes dark. Her mother in Mongolia tries calling, no answer. Hours later, her cousin files a missing persons report, describing how she was taken. But the silence from authorities is deafening. No search, no urgency, no concern. Because this isn't an ordinary disappearance. This is the moment a mistress collides with Malaysia's highest circle of power. And it's a collision she will not survive. Night falls over a jungle clearing in Shah Alam. It's quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that hides secrets. The car door slams. Altantuya is dragged out, wrists bound. She pleads with the men, 2 commandos in black, both trained to protect Malaysia's leaders. Instead, tonight, they are her executioners. What happened next will never be fully known. Some say she begged for her life. Others say she cried that she was pregnant. But only the killers heard her final words. Then, 2 gunshots, cold, precise. She collapses, but death isn't enough. Not for this mission. The men unwrap blocks of C4, military-grade explosives reserved for the army. They strap them to her body, and in the darkness, they ignite the blast. The explosion echoes through the jungle. Flesh and bones scattered across the ground. Her identity almost erased. Almost. Because investigators will still find fragments, and those fragments will tell a story too loud to silence. When police uncover the crime, the nation reels. 2 policemen are arrested, convicted, sentenced. But in court, the motive vanishes. Judges declare there was no reason given for the murder. No one explains why a translator had to die with military explosives. And that silence sparks the only question that matters. Who gave the order? If you're gripped by this story, subscribe now so you don't miss what comes next. Because stories of power, betrayal, and scandal don't tell themselves. 2 commandos were found guilty. Chief Inspector Azila Hadri, Corporal Cyril Ajar Umar, both convicted of Altantuya's murder in 2009, both sentenced to death. Case closed? Not even close. Because from the start, the trial made no sense. The court confirmed they killed her, but it never asked why. The motive erased. Judges declared it irrelevant. A woman was abducted, shot, and blown apart with C4. And no one explained why. And the man at the center of it all, Abdul Razak Baginda, walked free, acquitted without even mounting a defense. His connection to Altantuya was undeniable. His ties to Najib Razak even stronger. Yet he slipped away untouched. He left Malaysia, lived abroad, built a comfortable life. For nearly 20 years, he faced no prison time. Only in 2025 was he ordered, along with the government, to pay 5 million ringgit in damages to Altantuya's family. But that ruling was appealed. To this day, her father has not seen a single cent. The commandos weren't so lucky. Cyril Ajar Umar fled Malaysia in 2015 while on bail. He turned up in Australia, detained for years in immigration custody. But because Malaysia still had the death penalty, he couldn't be sent back. Then, in 2023, the law changed. The death penalty was no longer mandatory, and Cyril walked free. Today, a convicted murderer lives in Australia, untouchable, beyond Malaysia's reach. Azila Hadri remained behind bars. On death row, he waited for the gallows. But in 2024, his sentence was commuted to 40 years in prison and 12 lashes with the cane. He will likely spend the rest of his life in Kajang prison. But before his fate was sealed, he broke his silence. From his cell, he released an explosive affidavit, claiming he hadn't acted alone, that he was following orders. Orders, he said, from Najib Razak himself. Najib called it a lie. His allies called it desperation. But for Malaysians, the case was suddenly alive again. Because after years of silence, one of the killers had finally pointed his finger at the Prime Minister. For years, the silence held. The courts gave no motive. The government moved on. Najib climbed to the highest office in the land. But inside a prison cell in Kajang, one man refused to let the story die. Chief Inspector Azila Hadri, once a trusted bodyguard, now a condemned man, staring down the gallows. In 2019, with nothing left to lose, he put pen to paper, a sworn affidavit, and in it, a bombshell. Azila claimed he hadn't killed Altantuya on his own. He was following orders. Orders, he wrote, that came directly from Najib Razak. He said Najib told him Altantuya was a foreign spy, a threat to national security, that she needed to be taken care of. It was the kind of claim that could topple governments. But at that time, Najib was still in power. His allies called it fiction, a desperate attempt by a man on death row to save himself. Yet Azila didn't retract his words. He stood by them. He said he was ready to testify. If only the courts would let him speak. The courts never did. His statement was buried, officially ignored. But for Malaysians, it cracked the silence wide open. Because for the first time, a man who pulled the trigger was saying out loud what everyone had whispered for years. And in 2025, as Altantuya's father pushed to reopen the case, Azila's affidavit roared back into the headlines. It put Najib's name back in the courtroom, and it put Rosmah's name back in the shadows. If Najib Razak was Malaysia's prime minister, Rosmah Mansor was its queen. Not in name, but in power. Ministers feared her temper. Businessmen courted her favor. Staff whispered that nothing in Putrajaya moved without her blessing. She lived like royalty, diamonds, handbags, mansions filled with cash. By the time investigators raided her homes in 2018, they hauled away hundreds of designer bags and millions in cash, the kind of excess that earned her the nickname Malaysia's Imelda Marcos. But Rosmah's influence went beyond luxury. She was seen as ruthless. And in whispers, Altantuya's name was tied to hers. The rumor. Rosmah knew about the affair. Rosmah knew about the pregnancy. And Rosmah wanted the problem gone. Of course, none of this was proven in court. Rosmah herself has denied any link to Altantuya's death. But in Malaysia's corridors of power, people spoke carefully, because they feared what Rosmah could do. And that fear only grew as her own scandals surfaced. In 2022, she was convicted of soliciting millions in bribes for school contracts. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison. But even now, she remains out of jail, appealing her case, still draped in jewels. We've done a full video on Rosmah. Click above to watch it, or find the link in the description. So while Najib sat in Kajang prison, Rosmah still walked free, a woman untouched by the Mistress murder that haunted her husband, a woman whose silence still echoes louder than words. Najib was convicted, sentenced to 12 years in prison for the 1MDB scandal. Even that was cut in half after a royal pardon. His fines slashed. His allies whisper that he could be out sooner than anyone expects. Maybe even serving his remaining time in the luxury of his mansion. Rosmah Mansor was convicted too. 10 years for bribery. Yet while her husband sits in Kajang prison, Rosmah still walks free, still appeals, still draped in diamonds. Abdul Razak Baginda lives abroad, untouched by prison walls. Ordered to pay damages in 2025, but not a cent has reached Altantuya's family. And Cyril Ajar Umar, one of the killers, now lives in Australia. Free, beyond Malaysia's reach. A convicted murderer walking under the sun. Nearly 20 years later, only one man remains behind bars. Azila Hadri, the commando who pulled the trigger. The one who claims he did it on Najib's orders. His voice ignored. His affidavit buried. So the powerful continue to live in mansions, to walk red carpets, to play politics, while Altantuya lies in fragments, blown apart in a jungle clearing, remembered only by her father, holding a faded photograph in a courtroom. Because in Malaysia, justice is negotiable. But ghosts are not. And Altantuya's ghost still haunts Najib, still haunts Rosmah, still haunts a nation that cannot forget what was done to her. And if you thought this mistress's ghost was haunting, wait until you see Hollywood's debt to Malaysia, Leonardo DiCaprio, Paris Hilton, Miranda Kerr. They didn't just party with stolen billions from one MDB, they still owe the Malaysian people money. That story is coming next. Subscribe so you don't miss it. But right now, watch our new video on Rosmah Mansor, Najib's wife, dripping in diamonds, burning through appeals, and maybe finally heading to jail. It's on screen now. I'm John, and this is Silk Street, where power, betrayal, and scandal collide.